Hello. How are you? It's Romania Black, and we are on the rule of eight of DandaDan. And oh my god, we're on the rule of eight. Oh my god. Oh, yes. Yes, we are on episode 8 of season 2. And if you don't know about the rule of 8, if you didn't remember it from last season, anytime there is an 11 to 13 episode season, typically the 8th episode is amazing or great or a massive turning point before we start the final act of the season or series. So we're on episode 8 of this one, and I'm super excited about that. So with that being said, we need to talk about some comments before we dive in to this episode, because I'm very, very excited. I've been kind of waiting all week for this, because the moment we saw Mozart and Beethoven ghosts flying above Okarun, I was like, oh, I need to see where this is going. So I have been patiently waiting and avoiding spoilers like the Dickens to be able to jump into this episode and know what's going on. But I do have some episode notes from episode 7 that I wanted to point out while I was on the rewatch, because I went back and rewatched episode 7 after the discussion while I was editing, because I was like, I want to go back and see that. And then I noticed a couple things, so I want to kind of talk about them that I didn't talk about in the discussion itself. And you all have probably commented on these things, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. So, because the comments I have from Patreon and YouTube are from episodes of 4, 5, and 6. So, from episode 7 rewatching, I wanted to point out that the evil eye being like semi-nude and muscular every time he appears, to me, is like a constant reminder to Okarun that maybe it's projecting that Okarun isn't strong enough physically or isn't enough of a man to protect Momo the way that he wants to, even though, you know, Momo's pretty solid on her own. She can take care of herself. But Okarun wants to be able to be someone that can protect her. If he says he's going to protect her, he wants to do it. And right now, it feels like the evil eye being this semi-nude muscular presence that's a very, you know, stereotypical manly man in appearance is kind of demeaning to Okarun, and he's going to try to have to work on fixing that, which honestly we all know Okarun's already made great strides doing his squats and push-ups and exercises leading up to this episode, but I think that he's going to continue to work on it. Also, I said it sucks because Okarun and Gigi are supposed to be friends. Like, Okarun defended Gigi so much as his friend, and so it sucks that the evil eye has gotten in the way for that with Gigi, which makes me want to have Gigi get mad at the evil eye, but we're not having that yet, and we're going to talk about that a little further down below. And then Momo and Okarun, I didn't notice this in the discussion, but when I went back and edited, they're both reading Ashido no Jo. So she was reading it alongside Aira. So that's another thing that they have in common. Also, maybe Momo can punch the evil eye because he's being a jerk and definitely deserves it. Monster Enthusiast for episode 4 said that Momo has not dated a lot of people, that the only guy she's dated is the one at the start of the series. Maybe I forgot about that. I probably forgot about that. It's been a while since season 1, but that's good to note. I still think that she has more experience than Okarun and has researched more than Okarun as far as what to do, and Okarun has not at all. They didn't talk about how to do foreplay in the monster magazines, just saying. So they weren't those monster magazines. Arbitrarify for episode 5 says the hand scene was the first t-shirt made for DandaDan for good reasons. I don't know what this hand t-shirt is, but if you all can share a picture of it in the Discord, those of you that are on Patreon, that'd be great. So maybe I'll see it there. Who knows? And then I have 2 other comments. One is from Poulis, and one is from Christopher Peterson. And they both are talking about Gigi and the evil eye, which, as you know from last episode, I have some opinions about. And so Poulis says the theme from episode 5, this theme of outer self versus inner self, is very prominently on display with our cast of antagonists. But I feel it's mirrored in a more authentic and messy way with our protagonists, which we've seen that. We've talked about that in the discussions of how Okarun projects himself on the outside versus his inner monologue. Momo, how she projects herself and her personality and her appearance versus her actual thoughts. We talked about that a lot in season 1. And even Ira's kind of been the bridge because we talked about her in season 1. And then in season 2, she kind of came full circle and came around. So we've talked about that. But Pulis says, I think Gigi has to learn that it's okay not to be happy all the time. And it's better for everyone when he lets others know how he feels. That was my, they were commenting on episode 5, and I'm like, well, that was my discussion for like most of episode 6 and 7, was that Gigi's just not been consistent. He's been very hot and very cold, which is funny as a pun with Evil Eye. But in terms of his character development, I'm like, you need to, communicate with your friends, and they will probably let you know that it's okay to show emotions, right? And by emotions, I mean vulnerability. You don't have to be goofy happy all the time. And it is kind of like, we know as the audience, we see him not be happy all the time. So I'm like, don't hide that from your friends. But that leads to a point that Christopher Peterson talks about with episode 6, saying, I love how good and compassionate Okarun and Gigi are, but there is a bit of selfishness with everyone involved here in keeping Evil Eye around. I'm not against trying to reform Evil Eye, but he is stated as being one of the most powerful yokai or spirits, and he wants to destroy all of humanity. So there's a bigger problem here that might need a bit more consideration. And yeah, so Christopher Peterson gives the example of, if we learned that a serial killer had a really awful upbringing and even could know that it was 100% the reason they became a killer, we could and should have sympathy for them, but we still shouldn't just leave them out and about. I sure hope for everyone involved, that Evil Eye doesn't get loose and kill a bunch of innocent people. That's what I've been frustrated with Evil Eye about, because I'm like, Gigi has been so kind to you and has advocated for you this whole time, and you don't give a shit. You're just like, I'm going to kill all of humanity, when there's literally a human standing up and advocating for you, and you're just using them. And so when it's like that, I kind of don't have sympathy for Evil Eye anymore. I'm like, you've kind of wasted that. Like, you had a horrible upbringing, but that's not an excuse for you to hurt others. Like, just because you had a bad upbringing is not an excuse or reason for you to project that onto other people. Sorry, it's not. And that's not an excuse. You don't have to do that. You can stop the cycle at any time, actually. And the fact that Gigi was trying to stop that cycle for you and telling people that they should have sympathy for you and convinced people to have sympathy for you, and then you just shoved it back like you didn't give a shit. And people are like, well, he just needs some discipline. I'm like, I'm kind of with Manjaro right now. I'm like, he kind of needs to be exercised. I'm like, no, he's threatening not only Gigi's friends, but Gigi and everyone around him. If he doesn't get the hint, I would have exercised him. I've been like, no, but the plot's not going to do that, because Gigi has to have magical powers so he can be on the same field as Okarun, Aira, and Momo. So it's just going to be, I hate that. I don't hate's a strong word. I don't like the dialogue of, he just needs to be taught a lesson and get his little, it's kind of infantile. It kind of infantilizes Evil Eye a little bit. Like, he's just a little kid that needs some discipline. And I'm like, yeah, but he's hundreds of years old at this point. Like, and has killed, people and, been threatening Momo and everything. So I'm like, why do we, at some point the sympathy the well runs a little dry. And compared to like what he's been trying to do to Momo and everything, I'm like, no. So we'll see. We'll see. I have no sympathy for Evil Eye at all. I feel for Gigi, but I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, Gigi, you need to start, maybe realizing that you need to put your foot down. But we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, so those are my comments. I've talked for nearly 10 minutes, but Evil Eye is just, I just think that people, they underscore like all the damage he can do and all the bad things he can do, being like, he just needs to learn some discipline and realize he's just being a jerk. I'm like, no, he's, a serial killer ghost. Let's not make him seem like he's sunshine and kittens, so I don't know. That's the old person in me waving my arm and shaking my fist, but whatever. Anyway, I'm pretty excited. It's the rule of 8, so let's get down to business, shall we? Okay, so we're going to get down here and we're going to start DandaDan Season 2, Episode 8, aka Episode 20, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and y'all have no idea how excited I am to hear and see what all is about to go down. We're going to talk about Evil Eye, obviously, and I realize infantilizing is probably not the best way to describe the attitude around him, but we're going to talk about it. But before we get into that, I was thinking about, as the end credits are playing, this was an amazing episode. This was an amazing episode. Oh my God. Rule of 8 does not let us down. It never has. It never will. It's like the meme with the astronaut where he's like, has Rule of 8 ever let us down? Never has. This episode was a smorgasbord of amazing animation and movement and frenetic musicality and energy. And it was so good. And I loved so much about this episode. What else can you say? The animation direction, the direction of this episode. You could argue like, oh, well, it's not Kyoani or Ufotable or something, whatever. But the direction, the art style, the movement, the way the battle orchestra, like it was literally an orchestra. It felt like it was creative. There were so many moments of creativity and stylistic choices. It was just, mwah. It's been maybe my favorite battle sequence in this entire series so far. I think it has. It's not been the prettiest to look at because I would argue some of the stuff with Evil Eye has been really, really well animated. And I have a feeling next week it's going to be well animated, or it'll just be done in 5 seconds. Who knows? Who knows? So we don't know how that's going to go. We're going to talk about that later. But because I think Okarun kind of got to the point that I wanted to talk about, and it's just my ongoing, developing, evolving frustrations with Evil Eye and the reception towards him. We'll get towards that later. But anyway, we haven't gotten to that yet. And I've got some other things that I've noticed on social media I want to talk about with this episode. But anyway, so this was just a fantastic episode. I loved the creativity. I loved that it's the fear of the musicians in the music class that was fed into the posters and made them come to life. That's genius. I love that because honestly, our music program got cut when I was in junior high and it never came back because #small school, #real problems. And I didn't take another music class until I was in college, and that music class scared the dickens out of me. I was terrified. I don't know how to identify an oboe versus a clarinet, and I had to, luckily the teacher was really nice, and they let you retake tests in that class, and I retook like every single one of them 1,000 times until I got an A, because I was like, don't want to get this wrong. So yeah, I definitely love a good training arc episode in a shonen. This was amazing. This felt, again, last week felt kind of like Bleach. This felt like Bleach too. I love a specific training arc episode. And it was all self-contained, which was fun too. And I like the idea of how Okarun worked so well with Aira. Okarun is the greenest of flags, y'all. He's the greenest of flags. He's not only kind and considerate and smart, and he's able to implement what's shown to him, but he's also very tactful and just kind-hearted, like him thanking Aira and for helping him and just is a nice guy. I don't blame Aira for having a crush on him. I really don't. I think we got a really cool moment with Aira where she's like, I need to just be myself. And that moment, I want to see more of that because I feel like, Momo is herself, and that's kind of what's drawn Okarun to her is when she's acted like herself and they've had those little moments. So I think I don't think Okarun's going to romantically like Aira, but I think that they could become friends. And so I think that that's, really good. And honestly, I think because Okarun is so genuine and authentic in who he is, that is what draws Aira to her, because she has to put up such a facade of who she is around other people that, to be around someone that's so open and genuine, it feels probably foreign to her. And I think, I wanted to ship her and Gigi, but Gigi is not being true to himself entirely. He is, but he also puts on this veneer of just, I'm goofy all the time. And I'm like, but he's not. I mean, he is goofy and kind of a ditz and, a big goofball and lovable, but he puts on a veneer of everything's fine, even when it's like the dog with the cup and the fire. It's like, this is fine, is Gigi. And I'm like, it's not fine. And so I feel like Gigi and Aira they could get closer if they dropped the pretense and were just themselves. And by themselves, it's not just Aira being the girly girl that's, very vain, because she is, but it's also her being able to be vulnerable and be kind and kind of, like, oh, well, thank you, and be like toned down, right? She doesn't have to be an 11. And Gigi's the exact same way. He can be high spirited and optimistic and fun and hilarious, but he doesn't always have to be a meme. He can be real and have vulnerability, and that's fine too. And both of them have shown moments where that's happened, but I feel like during those moments they don't think people are watching. And we are. So, we just want to see them act like that the whole time. So yeah, I loved everything about the orchestra. I'm such a big fan of just color spotting, and when things are black and white or grayscale and then they have like pops of color. This was like 2008 Romania would have been like just gobbling everything about this episode up and wanting to like redesign their entire room to be this aesthetic. I love it so much. So yeah, I also love, by the way, when Silky's in Aira's turtleneck dress with the trench coat. Amazing look. Probably my favorite Aira look so far. I love her in this. It's so good. I'm glad that nothing ripped it. I was like, at the very end there, there was a shot where one of the illusions had a hand on a boob, and I was like, do not rip that damn dress for no damn reason. And they didn't. Again, you're close to slapping the wrist, and it does it. And I want to talk about that too, because throughout this, Okarun loses his shirt. He gets shirtless. He has the hood. All that's left is like the hood that's left. And I saw something online. They were talking about episode 7, and when Momo gets assaulted by Evil Eye, people were like, and we talked about this last week, it's like there was no reason for that. There really wasn't. You could have gotten across how dire the situation was without kind of objectifying Momo, which is what happened. And so people online, I noticed, and I try to stay away from DandaDan spoilers, but sometimes they pop up. Nobody has tagged DandaDan. They just pop up on the feed without a tag, and you're like, tag things so there are no spoilers. But there was something that popped up. It was like, oh, well, you don't talk about Okarun when he's shirtless or Gigi when he's shirtless. And I'm like, no, because the thing of it is, and this is called media literacy. I'm an English teacher. Let's do some 101 education here about how this works. Gigi, yes, is exploited for their appearance nude. It's Evil Eye, but it's also representing this view of masculinity that is in direct contrast with Okarun, and it's, projecting Okarun's struggle in various aspects, like we talked about in the intro here. But Okarun, there is a difference. If you notice in this episode and in previous episodes, with the exception of episode 1, or the episode where the aliens like have Okarun up in the air. It's not episode 1, but where the Nessie thing is. With the exception of that scene. In that scene, there was some sexualization of Okarun the same way that Momo had been in episode 1, right? So with the exception of those two scenes, any other scene that we've seen with Okarun has not been through the male gaze. It's not been objectifying Okarun in any way. He just loses a shirt. People lose their clothes a lot in this series, and that's fine. If Momo loses her shirt, okay, but if you notice, and I say this because I'm someone that studied this, I've done collegiate papers on this very topic in terms of gender studies and things. If you watch how hands are placed, if you watch how women are sexualized in media, it is different than men. It just is. And I know people think that the male gaze is a trigger word and people just throw it out there, but it exists and it has ramifications. It does. Product of those ramifications. So, it's worth discussing. And it is noticeable in this series at times, and it needs to be called out. So, but I don't think Okarun was not objectified at all in this episode. He was not. If anything, him being exposed was a way of him growing stronger, which again is the difference, And I think that obviously Momo was able to take charge against Evil Eye, which was good, and that did subvert it to an extent. But it didn't need to go there in that episode. Here, they are bombs. So bombs ripping clothing makes logical sense. It didn't make any sense in the last episode, so there's just a difference there. But I love that, again, the reason why, like, Ira having an advantage against the musicians isn't just girl power, quote unquote. It has a justification and a reason explained. It's the fact that she has ballet skills. She has the rhythm of a ballet dancer because of Silky's abilities. And that rhythm allows her to evade the notes and be, effective against the musicians. And her hair is essentially like Rapunzel meets Tarzan. So it's a fun time. But Okarun has not been thinking about the rhythm. He's been focused on speed and strength, but not thinking about the technique. And Turbo Granny has been like, let's think about the technique. And that's kind of what he has to learn in this episode. And it was a great training episode. I thought it was really well done. I loved Ira's part in it. She was never like doing more than Okarun, but at the same time, she wasn't relying upon Okarun. He did save her that one time, which was great. I love that she was like, Okarun, my hero. And he's like, hey. It was great. But anyway, let's get past this OP, shall we? We're going to get past it. I love that it was in like the rice paddy that was a justification to make them sync. It was great. And just the music notes, everything was so much fun. I loved it. The one guy that was playing the horn kind of reminded me of Mid-Valley from Trigun. What did he say here? So we had there, what was he going to play? Beethoven talked about it here at the beginning. I love Turbo Granny. He's like, incompetence. He says, die, damn it. And so he's like, choo choo train entering platform 6. I don't know who the one cello player is. I don't know who he is in this. I'm sure someone in the comments will have like a whole like itinerary describing who everybody is in detail and why they're saying the things that they are. I know we had Bach, Mozart, Beethoven. I don't know if Tchaikovsky is one of them, but one of them kept saying father. He's like, don't just talk about dads. I'm amazing too. I don't know why they said that. Classical musicians. I don't think that, or composers. I know that I think it was Mozart. Did Mozart have like 1 million children? One of them, Bach or Mozart, one of them had a ton of kids. Oh yeah, Tchaikovsky. Maybe Tchaikovsky was playing the, maybe Wolfgang Amadeus was, I think, one of them, or Johann Sebastian. Beethoven, Bach, and Mozart. Yes. I wonder why one of them had the thing with the kids. I don't know. Although Tchaikovsky, it said, had nothing but disregard for his wife after they separated, calling her the reptile. Yikes. So, the forefathers of classical. Maybe that's why he said fathers. Oh, I'm amazing too. Oh, that's why he says father, because there's the forefathers of classical music. Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, and Chopin. Okay. And the other guy was like, oh, Johann Sebastian was like, don't just talk about dads. Okay. All right. That maybe makes a little bit more sense. Somebody's going to explain it in the comments down below. So increasing the tempo. This was just a lot of fun. I loved this so much. And I loved... and Okarun's so nice. He's like, Ira-chan is awesome. She's dodging all of them. Also, I just want to say, and this does not seem like something that's a big deal, but I love the idea of Okarun acknowledging how good Aira and Momo are as female characters. That's so refreshing in this series, because it could easily be like, a girl is overshadowing you and your abilities. You've got to catch up and be a man. Like, it could be that. It could be that, but it's not. Instead, it's just simple. Okarun acknowledges that they're great, and he's working alongside of them, and that's all there is to it. That's all there needs to be. And I love DandaDan for that. I think DandaDan does such a good job of just being this progressive shonen in a lot of ways. In some ways, I'm kind of like, oh, we're stuck in our ways. But in a lot of ways, they are progressive. So yeah. And so the two of them work together. I love the color spotting with the red and the pink. Turbo Granny was also a lot of fun in this. Turbo Granny talking about watching the rests and the rests. People that love music and know music and can read music will probably love this episode so much. And I feel for you. I was in it for the aesthetics and the visuals and the sound. Oh, when they started doing Symphony Number 9, that was perfection. That scene was perfection. So, but Turbo Granny was so much fun. And I like at the end, she's like, oh, well, I'm actually trying to kill you, but She reminds me a lot in this episode of Madara from Natsume's Book of Friends. Reminds me a lot of Nyanko Sensei. And I can definitely see it in so many ways. But she was just a delight this episode. Her trying to mentor Okarun and still be her catty self and arguing with Aira and calling her a skank the whole time. Oh my God. But yeah, Miss Shiratori is incredible. I think it's cool that Okarun says Miss Shiratori, but when he's in Turbo Granny form, he says Aira-chan. That's fun. I forgot about that. He's like, I thought I got at least a little bit stronger. Now, but I haven't at all. And what I like about this moment here is Turbo Granny's like, if you got time to whine, then you got time to grow a spine. Or what did she say here? He's like, but I haven't grown at all. And she throws the mud at him. If you've got time to whine, then move your spine. A sense of rhythm. Rhythm. And I Okarun was feeling down on himself and feeling like, he's like, I thought I fought all these powerful opponents, and so I would at least get a little bit stronger. And I'm like, but you're not a Saiyan. This isn't Dragon Ball Z. You're not just going to... And again, that is subverting a lot of the shonen logic, because a lot of the logic would be like, oh, well, you faced all these monsters and things so far, so the more you face, the more experience you get, the stronger you get. But that's not it. You have to also learn technique and develop and grow yourself. You can't just expect it to fall in your lap just because this is a battle shonen. Love it. She's like, you need to know the rhythm. We don't know how long that skank can keep dodging. You don't need to understand the performance. You just have to remember any kind of music that you know and get a rhythm. And poor Okarun, I could relate to him in this moment because he's like, I don't listen to music at all. I don't know any songs. I listen to a lot of music, but I would not describe myself as musical. I can't read sheet music. I can't play an instrument. I can tap my fingers on a piano, but that's about it. And I feel for Okarun being like, well, what do I do? What do I base it off of? And oddly enough, here's the thing. I wonder if he's thinking of the Hayase song. I wonder, he's like, I was so touched I got in the rhythm. And he did. Yes. I wonder, since he's facing Gigi next episode and his rhythm is based on the rhythm of the Exorcist band, if that's going to benefit him in that battle in any way, shape, or form. Maybe. But I love it. Any chance we get to hear Chuya's voice actor sing again, I'm up for it. I'm glad for it. I was glad we got to hear him again. They're like the soundtrack of the season. Poor Aira, though. She gets stuck in the rice paddy. Love her outfit. And then Okarun rescues her. And she's like, oh, Takakura-sama. I love, even in silky form, she has the big eye, like, oh, you rescued me. I mean, I don't blame her. And then Hunting Soul starts to play. That was genius. I freaking loved it. It was great. So we figure out once we behead the musicians, they turn back into posters. I love Aira's her JoJo's pose that she has. Looks great. Okarun looks like a damn feral beast. And then they all start performing this orchestra. It turns into Dumbo, like the pink elephants where all the notes are colorful. And we get 4 different views. We get the night sky. We get the golden archways of a cathedral. We get the rosy plains. And we get the skies of European, the European skies. I love all of those colors and notes coming together. It looks beautiful. It's great. And then things just went off the rails in a way that only the rule of 8 could pronounce. Mm-hmm. Because you had Beethoven, who gets pissed after the others 4 start to play, and they start Symphony Number 9 together. And then, for whatever reason, these 4 titans rise up out of the floor and start singing. And now the 4, I call them titans because I'm thinking of Attack on Titan in this, but the 4 figures rise up. There's 2 men and 2 women. What they are supposed to represent, I don't know. You all will tell me in the comments, I'm sure. But they rise up out of the ground. They have the same glowing eyes and the same light emanating from them as the Keto family. So that's interesting. They're supposed to be yokai, but is there a connection there? I don't know. But then they open their mouths, or the one starts singing, which his voice was beautiful. And then the others open their mouths, and it felt like, I don't know, it was a Kung Fu Hustle. It felt like that film where it's just fighters just over and over and over again. Insane. Insane. They just start falling and immediately start running after them like a damn zombie movie. It was wild. It was crazy. And just them bowing down, all of this, and then Turbo Granny's like, oh, they're just illusions, but they could smother you to death. It's like, what? So, oh my God. It just, everything was chaos. And them all getting out. And I love the Turbo Granny's like, hey, don't worry about them. They're just illusions, but also save yourselves before you get crushed to death. And then I loved Aira and Okarun grabbing each other's hand. I love the symbolism of them connecting together, becoming friends, working to fight these titans. Isayama be damned. This was so much fun. I love this. I miss Attack on Titan. I miss Attack on Titan so much. And so this was a fun reminder back to that. Also, Aira, she tells Okarun to go ahead and go after the musicians. And she gets punched. She gets smacked by the singer when she kicks him away. She gets punched by him after she's like, leave these guys to me and get the musicians. And then he smacks her. They smack her as they hit the one guy. And as she's falling down, her mask breaks. And for a second, we see something. Yeah, we see Okarun eating the food. We see all of them in the... What's interesting is all of them are in the room, but Gigi is not there in her memory. And then we see Momo, we see Chiquita, we see the granny, we see Oh, that was when he was in Taro. Never mind. There he is. And we see she saw Gigi and Okarun talking to each other. Okarun looking back. And then she's like, screw this. I'm not done yet. Love it. Love it. Mm-hmm. Yep. And faces them all again. And Okarun figures out how to get his rhythm and what the 5-skip beat means. Mm-hmm. I love this. It was so great. Yep, the 5 switches per beat. And he finally understands it. And then we have this epic shot of Beethoven and all of them with the sketchy designs of their face in great detail. I don't know what else can be said about how good the animation was in this episode, except that I was living. I was so in love with how this episode was animated. It was just... the movement, the choreography, the energy of it was amazing and outstanding. And I was like, I can't say enough good things about it. I have no notes. No crumbs were left. No music notes were remaining after this. I even loved, they had the stands, the orchestra level in the balconies. And if you look towards the end, all these illusions were starting to fall out of the balcony. They were just overflowing ants. It was creepy. So creepy. But yes, as they turn back into posters, we see the shot of Aira and the illusions are starting to grab at her boobs and her coat and everything like that. And then she gets free and it's all good. Good for her. And then they go back to the music room. And the music room is just, if not more, as beautifully animated. It was so good. And Okarun's like, are you okay, Miss Aira? And he's like, somehow I was able to defeat it thanks to you. He's so nice. Okarun is such a green flag. He's so nice. He's so kind. Y'all should model yourselves after Okarun. He's such a good guy. He really is. And he gives credit where credit's due. That's one of my favorite qualities in people. And then she, is genuinely moved by him being so kind. And she doesn't know how to respond. And what she normally would do is be like, oh, that's not the case. You were super impressive too. Tee-hee. And would go over to him. But then you cut out and see her just standing there. She's like, my normal self. Come out already. And I love that because that is a justified moment. Her before, her tee-hee self, where she's like, oh, you're just saying that. You were super impressive too and all this. She really wants to be like, thanks. Yeah, I did do that. Because I think that so often in previous shonen that anytime the main male character would be like, good job, madame, for assisting me in defeating the bad guy. She'd be like, oh, it was nothing. You did all the work. And all that shit. And Ira's like, I just take the compliment and be like, thanks. Cool. I'm glad we worked together, you know? And for her to ask her normal self to come out, oh, I love that growth for her. I love that growth for her. And I think that's another thing I've talked about in previous episodes that I wish Gigi would do is we don't get Gigi's internal monologue. And I keep waiting for it to happen. I keep waiting for Gigi to have some internal monologue moments like everyone else has had so that he can get the proper character development that he needs. And they just haven't done it yet. We don't get internal monologues with Gigi. We don't know what Gigi's thinking. And it's hard to connect to a character as much as the other characters when you hear what they're thinking, but you don't hear what the one's thinking, you know? And those of you that have read the manga, I'm sure that Gigi will open up and we'll finally get him monologuing, and I anticipate those days. But until those days happen, I'm just going to tell y'all how I feel based on what I'm seeing in front of me and what we've seen so far. Right? But I feel for Aira, where she's like, my normal self come out already. And that moment where she's like gripping her hands and nervous, trying to figure out what to do, that's so real. That's so real. That's genuine vulnerability, authenticity. I'm like, character work, 101. And then Turbo Granny being like, it was thanks to my lecture. You two should feel appreciative. I love, she says, if anybody plays the piano at 2 a.m., they'll come out and try to kill them. And of course, Turbo Granny's like, well, my power is far beyond this. You just haven't been able to access it yet. And so these are thoughts that have been given forms. I love when it gets down on the keyboard, on the piano keys, and like clicks it, and she didn't mean to, and then she hits it on accident, and they both are like, in her face, she's like, oh. I love how Okarun is drawn in that moment. He looks so good. That entire shot is amazing. So yeah, and then it starts all over again. Meanwhile, Evil Eye is being discussed, right? And so I didn't bring Whiteboard Kun out for this episode, and I agree with Manjaro, you need to do something. We need to stop beating around the bush. And here's the thing. I am all for restorative justice. I have certification in it. Part of one of my degrees is in restorative justice and conflict mediation and things like that. So preaching to the choir about reforming Evil Eye. But the thing is, it comes from two fronts. One, you have to want to be reformed. And Evil Eye is not giving off the vibes that he wants to be accepted by humanity. For a creature that everybody in the comments are like, oh, Evil Eye. I'm like, Evil Eye had a terrible upbringing, a terrible backstory, horrifically sad, absolutely cruel. But how he's acting now, I'm like, I don't think it's justified. I think especially when the person you're inhabiting has bent over backwards literally for you, and you're just like, I'm going to kill your family and friends. It's like, aren't you being as bad as the people that were bad to you now? How does that work? So pot calling the kettle black. So it's like, you know, you got to break that cycle of violence. And Evil Eye is not interested in that in the moment. And the other thing is, I realized saying it was infantilization is not what I meant. That's not the best way to have phrased it, but here's how I feel. Because let's break down this scene, right? So Gigi is sad because Gigi has a kind heart. And Gigi wants to spare Evil Eye. He knows Evil Eye had a horrible time as a kid. He's like, well, maybe, you know, if we keep showing him kindness, he won't kill us all, which has not been proven right at all. It's like when somebody's trying to stab you with a knife. They're sitting there literally trying to kill you, and you're like, but maybe if we're nice enough to him, they'll stop. At some point, they may not stop and you may die. So realistically, their idea, it works for the realm of magical shonen. But in real life, I'd be like, bitch, he's going to kill you. And he does not seem interested in reforming right now. So one, he has to want to reform too. And that doesn't seem to be the case. And Manjaro's like, Psycho or Momo could die. This house is in shambles. We're really not going to be able to outlast this if something doesn't happen. And he's like, at this rate, you couldn't live with your parents either. And I think that that's what gets the grandma, because the grandma kind of, the cigarette tenses up there. I think when he's like, it's all fun and games now because we're tee-heeing and laughing and throwing the water on you. But what if you get around your parents and you can't control it and you kill your parents? Then what? You going to forgive Evil Eye then? for killing your parents? Because it would. It says it wants to kill all of humanity. What do we do then? You know? And so we'll perform the exorcism tomorrow. We'll bring Hayase back. And then Okarun shows up. And now Momo, to Momo's credit, she's like, hey, we need to talk about this as a group. And she's like, well, Grandma, you know, Gigi's been training his spiritual powers, but we all know it's not enough. And then for Okarun to say, Jin in Joji, step outside. Okarun, my dude. Okarun is my favorite character. I love Momo to pieces. Momo is my second favorite character, but Okarun is my favorite. I freaking love him. He's so good. And Momo's like, what are we doing? And I like that this is, I like Terrible Granny standing there like, you know, sitting there too. And then Ira's also there like, all right. Ira's holding the thermos, but I like Turbo Granny and Okarun are both like, here we go. Let's do this. And I like his reasoning here. I like how Okarun breaks it down, right? Because he says what needs to be said. And and Momo's like, what's going on? Where have you guys been? Where have you been this late at night? And then Ira's like, you know, you don't want to ask. And she's like, here's the water. What are you planning to do? And he's like, nobody get in the middle of this. He's like, it's between us. We need to settle this. We're friends, but this evil eye business has gone too far and we need to settle it. And I have some thoughts kind of mixed about this. He's like, I'm going to give Evil Eye the beating of his afterlife. One, great. Evil Eye needs his ass kicked and he needs to just get, you know, pummeled to the ground for what he's done. So yes, absolutely. Love Okarun for saying this. And of course, Turbo Granny, because, you know, Momo was assaulted and all this, Turbo Granny, who has been a defender of women who've been assaulted, is like, yes, he does need to get beat, the beating of his afterlife. And Momo's like, oh, now I'm going to get really mad. This isn't a game. And Okarun's not playing around either. He's like, I was pissed when Evil Eye assaulted you. You and me both, friend. You and me both. I'm so glad that Okarun says this. Where he's like, I was pissed whenever he assaulted you. Yep. He's like, I was really pissed off. And that's, okay, that's one of my things is, I know, to people, it won't be a big deal. It won't be a big deal. But I don't know. I have a feeling that I saw something online and maybe it's not, you know, maybe it's not the, like, grand opinion, but I saw something online where people were like, oh, Evil Eye, he's just a little kid trapped in this thing and he just needs a wrist slapping and once he gets beat up and gets some discipline, he'll be a better person. I'm like, yeah, we really let him off the hook, don't we? I'm like, because he, you know, sexual assault's not cool. It's one of my triggers. I hate it. I honestly cannot stand it. And so I was so glad when Okarun brought it up and being like, yeah, we're going to talk about this because it happened. And I'm glad he's pissed off about it and is doing something about it. But I'm kind of like, it's, you know, I don't know. I feel like it's always been a trope in media, especially from like the 90s up. It's like the trope of like the villain that gets reformed and becomes a good guy again. It's like Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. And you could name a whole lot of other ones that have done things. And I don't know. I've talked about this with Berserk, with that series as well, which is a much more serious series than this. But I don't know. It's just weird to me because some people make the argument with being like, oh, well, this character in this anime murdered a lot of people and then reformed, but you love them. And I don't know. I feel like, again, I talked about this in Berserk, but nobody that was murdered can speak up in offense to a murderer getting reformed. They can't because they're dead, you know? But someone who's been assaulted still has to live and exist and be here. And when a character does that, and then the people that watch it are like, I love this character. They're so badass and cool, even though they're a villain. And I'm like, hi, you know? And I know the people that like that character don't mean anything by it. They're not meaning to like support that action. But I feel like we as a fandom kind of just gloss over that action and forgive it so easily. And just overlook it and go, oh yeah, he did that, but he got beat up by Okarun and now he's gonna be a good guy. And it's like, I just, it irks me. It irks me because I'm like, should we just gloss over it? I don't think we should. Should we just easily like ignore that it happened and not care about it? I don't know. I don't know. So I'm glad that Okarun is like, I'm gonna kick your ass because you did that. Because you shouldn't do that. And you should apologize. He doesn't say that Evil Eye should apologize to Miss Ayase, but he should. He at the very least should. I don't know. He's like, Evil Eye is dangerous. He's savage and cunning, and he's not someone we can ignore. Which is very true. It's very true. And I like, he's like, Miss Ayase, you guys are trying to accept him. I like that Okarun basically says he doesn't want to accept Evil Eye because of what he's done. And I'm like, yes, exactly. You don't want to accept Evil Eye because of what he's done. And that is valid. Good. I'm glad that he says that. But at the same time, he understands what they're trying to do. And he's like, it's absurd and stupid, but it's kind of badass that you want to reform this guy and try to make him see the errors of his ways. And I love that. That's great. Okarun does everything right in this. The other thing that I'm kind of just like, and he's like, I'm pissed off at my own weakness. And I love that Okarun is like, I should have been able to protect you, Momo, and I couldn't, and I'm mad about it because I should have been a better friend. I was standing right there in front of you and I couldn't defend you, and that's not cool. And he says, just you wait, Gigi. Your will to protect Evil Eye, I'll make sure to protect it. My thing about this is that at this point in the story, I love everything Okarun is doing. He's like, you all want to try to reform this evil spirit. I think it's stupid, but I respect what you're trying to do. I want you to be protected, so I'm going to have to show this stupid spirit who's in charge so that we can get on to the next step of things and move forward. And I love that. One thing that is bugging me about all of this is that this part here where Gigi is just like, he's like, so please stay calm. We've already decided. And they're like, we've decided that Gigi's going to be exorcised. And Seiko's like, no, just let him do it. Don't embarrass him. Let him have this fight. And she's like, here we go. And Momo's like, okay, I guess this is going down. And then Gigi, looking very sincere. Like, Gigi looks like a little Labrador. He does look really cute there. And he's like, I'm trusting you with Evil Eye. That's the part that I'm like, I like it. I like Okarun, like, kicking his ass. But I don't know what you all think, but for Gigi to be like, okay, you save me. I'm like, haven't you been training, Gigi? What are you doing? Like, Gigi, I want Gigi to have some sort of impact on this. And it looked like he was, but now Gigi's literally the damsel in distress. Gigi is the one we have to save over everybody. Not Momo, not Aira. They're doing great. But it's Gigi who is the damsel in distress that we have to save. And I'm like, I don't want people to think I don't like Gigi because I think he's a wholesome little bean. But the way that he's written, I'm like, gah! I'm like, come on, Gigi. Like, you should be the one fighting Evil Eye. You should be the one fighting the battle within yourself. But you let this in, and now other people have to do it for you. I'm like, I don't know. The writing of that irks me a teensy bit. And he's like, yeah. And then, of course, I don't know why Evil Eye can't just fight with the clothes on, but whatever. It is what it is. And then at the very end, I do love the shot of Evil Eye. Again, Evil Eye is just smiling as he's battling Okarun. I'm like, he's learned nothing this whole time. And I just don't know. I don't like Evil Eye at all. I don't like what he represents, and I hate him. And tragic backstory, yes, but there was so much more heart and sympathy with Silky's backstory, and I could so empathize with it so much more. And, Silky wasn't out to destroy the world. She was just this misguided spirit that was, horrifically damaged and broken. And Evil Eye has been broken, sure, and damaged, but then was like, I'm just going to kill everyone. And it's like, I don't know. Show, you're going to have to make me feel for Evil Eye because I definitely do not right now. But I also am very biased based on my experience. So I'm like, I don't know if I ever will like Evil Eye, honestly, to be fair. Because again, the series just kind of, well, you know. And I'm sure so many people will disagree in the comments, and I'm a Taurus, so you won't convince me otherwise, but you might enlighten me about some things and nuances, so who knows. But anyway, Rule of 8 has not let us down, and I'm so excited to see what we get moving forward. I'm so excited. It's going to be a lot of fun, but I guess we'll find out next week. I can't believe we only have 4 episodes left. That's insane. They're going to obviously duke it out next week, but then we have 3 episodes to figure out what else to do. So I guess we'll find out then. Anyway, in the meantime, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. I get heated about stuff like that, and I don't mean to, because I know a lot of reactors are like, that was a lot of fun, and just have fun. But damn it, there are real topics being discussed in these episodes, and we need to talk about them. So I'm definitely showing myself as the older reactor in this. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, we'll see how this battle goes down on episode 9 next week of DandaDan Season 2, and I'll see you then.